If you're a medical professional hoping to succeed financially in 2025, how you end 2024 is incredibly predictive of that. The old saying, what gets measured gets managed, is 1000% true. So I have a checklist of every single thing you need to be doing at the end of 2024 to get ready for 2025. If you do money by yourself, download the list and do it. If you don't, if you have a partner that you do money with, you've got to do this together. If you actually do this together, you'll be on the same team and you'll be able to crush money as a unit versus trying to drag one person kicking and screaming down the street. So set a date. My husband and I do 2 dates, one fun date, one money date, where we sit down, walk through the whole list, and make sure that we're prepared to crush money in 2025. Because if you do this year after year, that success stacks. And the skills compound just like the money does until one day you look up and you go, whoa, it's amazing what we've done financially in the last 5 years. It does not happen by accident. It happens by intentionality. So let's walk through the list. Here's the checklist itself. The very first thing is to update your net worth statement. At the end of this video, I'll show you an example of what one can look like. But this is one of those tools that if you're not already using it, it will absolutely accelerate your long-term wealth building. Nothing gives you that 30,000-foot view of how you're doing with money and what you need to do to move the needle than having that annual net worth timestamp. This honestly is downright fun once you get on an intentional financial plan. And as a matter of fact, just a few weeks ago, my husband and I sat down and were like, let's look at our 2019 net worth statement. And we were just shocked to see what we had been able to do in 5 years of being incredibly intentional with money. So again, I'll show you an example, but if you haven't implemented this yet, make this year be the very first year that you do it so you know what your net worth actually is and how it's tracking over time. The next is to check year-to-date IRA contributions, remembering that the contribution limit for 2024 across traditional and Roth IRAs for an individual is $7,000 unless you're doing catch-up contributions. Now, the reason you should look at it today is that the actual contribution deadline for 2024 isn't until mid-April. And so that gives you a few months to go back in and max out this account if you haven't already. Now, if you're above the limit for making Roth IRA contributions, learn about the backdoor Roth IRA. And if you are pursuing the backdoor Roth IRA, make sure you have your tax ducks in a row and don't fall into one of those red flag tax situations under the pro rata rule. Regardless, this is an account no medical professional should be missing. And so with very few exceptions, you should make it your goal to have this maxed out every single year. Take a look at what you've done so far. Next is to check your FSAUs. I actually don't like FSAs. In general, they're use it or lose it accounts. They save you on taxes and that's about it. Medical FSAs it's common if you're young and healthy to contribute consistently and then not spend all the money by the deadline, which means that the money just kind of goes away. Dependent care FSAs tend to be a really nifty tool. If you have kids in childcare, it's such a predictable expense. You know with certainty what you're going to spend on childcare in a year. And so it's easy to make sure that you're going to use all the money you put into that account. Now, remember, because it's a use it or lose it, you need to know what's your deadline to lose it. And it may be end of year. You might have a grace period. Everyone's FSA servicer is a little different, but take a look and make sure you know what your deadline is. The next thing to do is to look at HSA contributions or health savings account contributions for 2024. The maximum for an individual coverage is $4,150 and for family is $8,300. Keep in mind, again, the deadline for contributing is actually tax day mid-April. So you have some wiggle room if you have catch-up to do. The next thing to look at here is, am I using my HSA as a checking account or am I using it as an investing tool? And which one should I be doing? If you don't know the answer to the question, you're using it as a checking account, I promise. Next step is to actually look at your income in your household across all sources. So what I will do is in my spreadsheet, I'll put the income source and the total amount earned from that source for the year. This is easy to do as you're getting all of your tax documents in order. So this would be my W-2, my husband's W-2, and then there's lists of all sorts of side hustles from over the years, right? Expert witness work, pharmaceutical speaking, per diem shifts, side business, like all of that is all listed out, and the total amount earned is listed as well. And then you can actually go through and figure out what percent of our household income comes from each source, which is helpful to know. For example, if 99% of your household income comes from one specific job in medicine, well, then having own occupation long-term disability coverage is probably pretty important because that's the only thing standing between you and no income. But if 42% of your household income comes from side hustles, right, it's helpful to know where the income streams are coming from. And then it helps you a little bit with risk mitigation and understanding where you could potentially be at risk for 2025. Then I add up all of that. What is the gross income for the household across all sources? Compare that to what was my total dollar invested for 2024. And so that, if you're a household with multiple incomes, that's going to look like what is the total household income, everything, all the side hustles, all the main jobs, all of it. What was invested across all accounts? 401ks, 403bs, HSAs, if you invest the funds, Roth IRAs, brokerage account, like you name it. What did we invest? Then you divide the two. Total amount invested by total household income. That gives you what I would argue is one of the most important money metrics to know, which is your investing rate. What percent of our household income do we actually invest? As a note, I do not count employer contributions in that unless you are 100% vested, meaning if you quit your job tomorrow, the money stays with you. The next thing to do is look at insurance coverage. Not only do I have the right coverage, but am I paying the right amount, right? It's best to get new quotes every year, every other year to make sure that for the level of coverage that you need, you're getting the best deal. You should rate shop, right? You need to use an insurance broker that's going to give you multiple options to look at rather than just going, this is what State Farm quoted me, so this is what I pay, right? You need to make sure that you are able to get the coverage that you need at the lowest price because this is an easy overhead expense to negotiate down if you're paying attention to it. One of the big gaps I see here in the medical professional world is having no life insurance and dependents. And when I say no life insurance, I'm including the people that get 1x their annual income from their job as their life insurance. I consider that effectively having no life insurance because most people need 10 to 12x their annual income in insurance coverage. So if you have 1x your income in life insurance from your employer, it is a drop in the puddle compared to what you need. The next is to have a 2025 investing goal, investing rate set as a goal. So you need to look and see, okay, like let's say this year I invested 16% of my household income. Well, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know that almost every single medical professional needs to clear 20% in order to secure their standard retirement. Anything less than 20%, you're probably in the danger zone, okay? So if you're at 16, then maybe your goal is to get to 20% in 2025. So you set that goal. You write that on paper. Okay. What does that mean? What does that translate into? It sounds so arbitrary, like, well, I should have a higher investing rate. Well, it translates to freedom and flexibility. Okay. If you want to have an early retirement, if you want to be able to reduce hours early and still come out okay on the back end, those things require assets. So the higher your investing rate, the faster you get there. Think about it that way. The next thing is to look at the 2025 contribution limits for all these tax advantage accounts because they change. For 401ks, Without catch-up contributions, it's increased to $23,500 for next year. IRA limits have stayed the same, but HSAs have also increased. So pay attention to that and go into your employer HR website or whatever and adjust your contributions. You should also, at this time, take a look at your total asset allocation of your portfolio. Everyone should probably rebalance at least annually. And if you don't want to do that at the end of the year, that's fine, but make sure there's a rebalancing date on your calendar. Some people use birthday, anniversary, end of year, etc. But there should be a date on the calendar where you review your asset allocation and rebalance your portfolio as needed. If you don't know what your asset allocation is, that's the first step and part of the problem, right? You should know what percent of my portfolio is stocks, what percent is bonds within the stocks, what percent is domestic versus international, and then what percent is large cap, mid cap, small cap. That's just a very basic asset allocation to know. And then you might even ask yourself, like, what other asset classes do I have? Like, do I have precious metals? Do I have real estate assets? I'm not counting your primary residence, right? True investment real estate assets, etc. The last three things are these. The first is to set savings goals. Now, this has nothing to do with your investing rate because saving and investing have nothing to do with each other. Remember that, right? Investing builds wealth, saving creates cushion and purchases. So you may have some things that you know are coming. Like, for example, maybe you need to replace a vehicle or you're thinking about moving, you need a down payment, things like that. If you know in advance, you're going to need some cash reserves for upcoming life stuff. Set savings goals around them, remembering that it has nothing to do with your investing rate, and you need to maintain your investing rate while you save money. If you have any type of investment real estate or actual side businesses that you run, you need to review those books as well. When we come to our end of year financial date, as we call it, we each have specific businesses that we're responsible for bringing the books for. And so my husband knows, hey, I need to have these 3 P&Ls done, and I know what P&Ls I need to have. And then when we come together, we're reviewing not only our personal finances, but the business books for everything else that's going on the side. So don't negate those pieces as well. If you have investment real estate, for example, it's a business. You should run it like a business and you should have books like a business. And so you should have books to review. The last thing, and I kind of think is one of the most important things, honestly, is to look at your charitable contributions for 2024. I think that giving charitably is an important part of every single financial journey at all phases, really. Whether you're at the very beginning and you're like, I'm investing 6%, I'm working on it. Or if you're like, hey, I'm a multimillionaire and everything in between, this is one of those things that you can help at some level no matter where you're at. I have found that if you wait to give to others until you have a feeling of personal financial abundance, you actually miss the easiest tool to unlocking personal financial abundance, which is giving. Because when we see need around us and when we intentionally reach towards that need and give to other people, we recognize that even though we have challenges in our own lives, of course, we may have high student loan burdens, difficulty with cost of living in whatever city we're in compared to our income as medical professionals. All those things are real challenges, but you can always go out and find somebody who has it 1,000 times worse. And that perspective brings gratitude and your own sense of abundance that's really hard to get when you're totally focused on your own financial journey and you don't see that need out in the community. So I would encourage you, if it's not money, it's time or some way, look at how you charitably contributed to your community in 2024, and then go ahead and set a goal around what that was going to look like for your household in 2025. We have done this every single year, just the same as we've sat and set what are our goals for our investing rate next year? What are our goals for savings next year? It's also been, hey, how can we increase our charitable impact? And by starting that at the very beginning, even back when we were living on $35,000 a year to pay off my student loan debt, even back then, by starting that at the very beginning, you do create this sense of gratitude and abundance in your own life for the whole journey. Nothing is quite as valuable as that. I hope this checklist has been helpful. If you click the link below, you can actually download a copy for yourself, but run through it. make sure that you're set up to end 2024 well, because the people that end 2024 well are the people that are going to crush 2025.